I'm glad you're here to join us for this weekend devotional. It is fairly late and being put on. I had an appointment in Lubbock yesterday early, and we spent the day there and spent some time with grandkids. But as I began to go to this doctor's appointment, there were several things that had come up with my leg, giving me a lot of trouble. It had nothing to do with the appointment. It's just one of those things that's there. And it gave me trouble all day long and hurt. And as I was visiting with the eye doctor, he began to talk about the things that were happening with my eyes. And the girl, the she said, I want you to put this over your left eye, and I want you to read what's up there. This was with my glasses on, and when I put it over my eye, I could not distinguish any of the letters. And so he began to tell me the things that were going wrong with my eyes, things that I had expected most of my life. And then he began to tell me some things about my eyes that I hadn't expected, and the things that I would need to do for the rest of my life to keep them in a shape where I really could see as I ought to be able to see. And each time I go to the doctor now, I find that there's another pill or there's something else I need to do. There's something I need to change to help my body be healthy, to help it increase the time of life, the abilities that it has. I listen to my parents and other older people as I grew up talk about all of these things happening, and I thought, well, it'll never happen to me. And yet it does. With that thought in mind, I want us to think, and we're carrying this a little far to one side, and yet it is a thought we need to look at. We don't like to think about death. We don't like to think about growing old. We don't like to think about those things that are there, and yet, uh, as a child of God, but as any man, there are things we need to consider. What if my what if I am not right with God? What then? He tells us, we have an eternity in heaven, and yet we need to be very aware we need to belong to God. In 2 Corinthians, the fourth chapter, I listened to Paul speak, and he's talking about what he is doing, his idea, his ministry, the telling of Christ, the giving those things he needs to present these things to others so that they might come to be followers of Christ. He said, but we have this treasure in jars of clay, and this treasure is it consists of a lot of things, but it is really the Word of God that is there for salvation. Very important to Paul. It should be very important to us that we have this treasure that's been given to us. And part of it is this eternity with God that has been promised to us as children of God. But he said we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. We are nobody. We're a weak fleshly body. We're given way to vanish, to grow old. But he talks about the things that have happened to him because he taught the word of God. He said, we're persecuted but not forsaken, struck down but not destroyed. Always carrying in the body the death of Jesus. Now, this is a spiritual thing. These things he talks about before they're facing these difficult situations because they belong to God, because they're teaching the word. But he said, we continue on. We continue through all of these things because we carry the body of the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may be manifested in our body, so that Jesus might be seen in us. He says, for we who live are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our mortal flesh. So death is at work in us, but life in you. In other words, he's saying that we are weak bodies. We're bodies that will die. Maybe because of the persecution they've been through, but I think Paul is also reaching an age where he is saying, this body is not going to last forever. His idea of dying to Christ is a spiritual death of putting aside the fleshly things, not worrying about the body, not worrying about those things that are there because we have something more. We have an eternity with Christ. This is a great deal of the treasure that Paul's talking about. They have, they have eternity with God. He goes through some more things, but the idea was he's saying, I seek to do these things so that others might know the Christ, so that others might know God, so that others might have this forgiveness of sin and the salvation. He said, it doesn't matter about my body. He lived in some very poor conditions, considering he spent a great deal of time in prison. And although he was able to live by himself and in certain situations, he still was in need of a lot of things that he was not given. He had ailments that had given him trouble all his life. So he knew that life was not long, it was short. And when we compare things, life is short. But he goes on down into verse 16 of this chapter. And he says, so we do not lose heart. No, though they're persecuted, though they're put aside, though they face difficulties, though the fleshly body is decaying away. He says, so we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away. He said, our inner self is being renewed day by day. As we think about that, especially as children of God, as this life is passing from us, all the difficulties, all the things that happen, the weaknesses that occur, the failing of the ability to walk to some point, the failing of eyesight, the failing of the use of our minds sometimes, the forgetting. He said, so we do not lose heart. We set this fleshly body aside. And maybe it is through persecution that we face death. I don't know. I don't know what lays before each one of us nor who we are. But the point is, we will face death one way or another. The body will waste away. Are we living our life to where that spirit is being renewed day by day? Are we seeking God? Are we telling others? Are we teaching others about Christ? You see, if we're going to give ourselves over to Christ, we must live for Him. Not because it's a command, but because He has given us an eternity in heaven with God. Do we love God? Do we love the Christ? He said, for this light momentarily affliction is preparing us for eternal weight of glory beyond comparison. The heartaches that we face each day, the difficulties of our personal life, just living, the failing of health. Maybe it's the facing persecution. Maybe it will be through someone hating you because you're a Christian that they cause you the difficulties in your body. I don't know. But he said, as we look not to the things that are seen, but we look to the things that are unseen, into this eternity with God. For the things that are not seen are transient, but the things that are unseen are eternal. So we need to look at ourselves. We need to prepare ourselves. If we're children of God, we should be living our life for God. We should be seeking to do His will. And in that situation where we're dying daily, where we're passing by in this life, we're being abused for whatever it is that's happening, but our body will fail us. We need to be living our life for God so that our spiritual body is growing and being renewed day by day by day, seeking to do God's will, seeking to live eternally. That is the important part of our life, of giving ourselves over to God, is to set the flesh aside. Don't give such concern. I'm not saying we shouldn't go take the eye drops for the eyes. I'm not saying we shouldn't go have a knee surgery done, to have a hip replaced, uh, to have our heart checked out, and do what we can to make our life longer. I'm not saying we shouldn't do this. I'm saying that while we're doing this, remembering this body is going to pass away. Trust in God. Live for Him, seek to do His will, and renew that spiritual body day by day. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. I hope you're able to join us tomorrow for first day of week here at Dora, New Mexico. Thank you so much, and God bless.